this discussion. So thank you very much. So speaking of being together, if you've served on any volunteer committees for City Club during the course of the pandemic, so that's the marketing committee, the membership committee, the program committee, the finance committee, and if you've been on the board of City Club during the pandemic, I'd like to ask for you to stand up, please. So we owe a lot of gratitude, and please remain standing if you would. So we owe a lot of gratitude to these folks, okay? So when you think about the pandemic, and it's easy for us all to understand how it's really changed our lives and added a lot of pressure and made time really evaporate on us all. You know, our jobs are more complex, childcare issues, helping family members and loved ones who needed our care. And yet here we are, these volunteers kept City Club and really our whole community kept us going. And so please join me in giving them a round of applause. And if you served on the program committee, I would like for you to stand again. It's going to be like aerobics. Okay, so I would especially like to point out these folks. Okay, their work is really the heart of City Club, you know, doing the actual work of the forums. And it takes a tremendous amount of work and time to put together a great forum, and takes in a tremendous amount of expert skill. And I would especially like to thank co-chairs Daisy Lehman, Kat Mastrangelo for their leadership and tenacity during a very challenging time when volunteerism across the world really has been at an all-time low. We couldn't have done it without you. I thank all of you on the program committee sincerely for your significant contribution. Please join me in thanking them. We also owe our gratitude to our sponsors, and City Club wouldn't be here if it weren't for their generous support. So please join me in thanking our platinum sponsors, ASI Wealth Management, the City of Bend, St. Charles Health System, and Brooks Resources, our gold sponsors, Pacific Source Health Plans and Central Oregon Association of Realtors, our community partner in education, OSU Cascades, our partner in higher education and workforce development, COCC, and our silver sponsors, Ameriprise Financial, Kittleson and Associates, Miller Lumber, Mosaic Medical, the Lucier Center, and Transformation Systems International. And to connect Central Oregon, who makes our live streams possible, and also to the River House for continuing to support City Club and working with us over the course of the past couple of years during the pandemic. And if you're watching the live stream, please, I would encourage you to enter a message of gratitude to our volunteers and to our sponsors right there in the chat. So now on to the program. Our moderator today is Zach Boone, a new City Club board member, Chief Advancement Officer at Central Oregon Community College, and the Executive Director of the COCC Foundation. Zach received his Master of Public Administration with a focus in nonprofit management from Portland State University, and a Bachelor of Arts in International Affairs from Lewis and Clark College. Zach has worked in respected charities in Central Oregon since 2007, including serving as Executive Director for the Ben Ronald McDonald House and as Associate Director of the Deschutes Land Trust. He is also actively involved in the Rotary Club of Bend Mount Bachelor and served as club president 2018 to 2019. Zach also serves on the board of Envision Bend. Zach, I'll now turn it over to you.
Thanks so much, Blair, for the great introduction. Nice to see you all today in person, some of you, and those of you joining us online. Appreciate you being here, too. Our first panelist today is also a new City Club member, just joined with me in the last month, Zavier Borja. Zavier is a first-generation Mexican-American who grew up in Madras. He has worked for various youth programs in the past 9 years. In 2019, he created a local chapter of the nationally recognized nonprofit Latino Outdoors, eventually forming Vámonos outside. Zavier has been able to serve on various boards and committees, which include the Latino Community Association, Heart of Oregon Corps, Latinx Success Initiative, Central Oregon Latinx Partnership Program, Travel Oregon, just wait a minute, I'm just getting started. The Oregon Outdoor Recreation Network, River Plan Focus Group, the Children's Forest of Central Oregon's Equity Committee, Bend's Young Professional Marketing Committee, Deschutes Trails Coalition Steering Committee, the Governor's Task Force Roadmap to the Outdoors and Environmental Equity Committee. I even have to turn the page here. And the Governor's Racial Justice Council. Last year, Zavier was elected to the Bend Park and Recreation Board, and in October of this year, he accepted the position of Community Relations Manager for the City of Bend. Please welcome Zavier Borja. Our second panelist today is Dawn Holland, founder and executive director of Dawn's House. Dawn moved to Bend to get clean after years of severe alcoholism. She went through 22 detoxes before entering a women's recovery home in 1998, where she found sobriety that helped lead to marriage and a family. In 2014, she learned the home that had helped her, the only women's sober living house in Bend at the time, was closing. Understanding what was at stake for Bend area women in need, directly assisting women newly sober, Dawn's House was born. Today, Dawn's House has 4 staff members, runs 3 houses, and provides on-site emergency RV housing to 5 families with children who had been homeless. Those eligible for the program include drug or alcohol-addicted women who have been displaced, meaning they are leaving treatment centers or jail in poverty and vulnerable to homeless or houselessness. House residents live in a structured environment, must pass drug tests, and are held accountable. The nonprofit has transitioned over 600 women with a 66% success rate. Amazing. Please welcome Dawn Holland. And our third panelist today is Jasmine Wilder. She's the managing director and founder of Honeybeast Digital. She has a background in strategic communications, public relations, and marketing strategy. She is passionate about the continual transformation of the leadership structures across Central Oregon and is dedicated to building our capacity for equitable systems. She grew up in Central Oregon and loves our beautiful, increasingly diverse and growing community. Jasmine serves on the executive board of Every Child Central Oregon, Strengthening Central Oregon PAC, and the Core Community Land Trust. She was recently nominated to be the chair of the Human Rights and Equity Commission for the City of Bend. Jasmine earned an undergraduate degree in public relations and continued her education, receiving an advanced degree in global strategic communications from Georgetown University in 2019. Jasmine lives and works in Bend, and many in her large family are close by as well. She is currently a foster mom to 3 brilliant boys aged 8, 6, and 6 months old. Please welcome Jasmine Wilder. Get the middle seat. Testing. All right, we're good. Thanks to our great AV team in the back for getting us all set up today, and we'll just jump right into it here. I do want to remind folks that you can text questions to the number on the monitor, which we'll get to in the second half of the program. But what we're going to start with today, and I'll start down at the end with you, Zavier, what inspired you to become involved civically? Maybe you could give us a quick summary. Everyone, see, that's why you come live, because things like that just don't happen on Zoom. At least I hope not. Here we go. Take 2. Yes. A quick summary of your journey and what caused you to become involved civically. I think you switch on the bottom. Yeah. Let's try it.
We good? Okay. Wow. Yeah, thank you for that. Kind of in the intro, so I've been engaged and involved at the time my level for working with youth, working with various programs, and just being engaged in that way. It wasn't until I moved and worked in San Francisco, where I was in 2018 was when I was really exposed to the conversation and concepts of DEI. So again, I grew up in Madras, I have lived in Bend for about 10 years, and I had never heard that concept of DEI, and not only that, but being able to talk about it openly. And that was such a breath of fresh air for me. It was so inspiring. It was so cool to see and learn what it meant to be an ally, what it meant to be an unrepresented community, how to serve, how to just uplift other people's voices. And I wanted to be a part of all of it. I didn't know how, but I just wanted to learn what that meant and what that looked like. And in kind of a short time, I felt that I had a decent understanding, still not totally. But what I realized was that there's so much good stuff happening already in the Bay that I was like, why don't I take kind of what I'm learning here and go back to where I'm from in a community where I personally don't see that happening or haven't seen that happen in the way that I feel like it should be. And from that, I was like, well, I need to start with the community that I reflect, that I'm a part of, and I identify as like Latino. And so I was like, I'll start with like the Latinx community and figure out how to be engaged and be involved here in a sector, in an area which I love, which of course we live in Bend, Central Oregon. So the outdoors was just a natural fit. And so in the intro, I had started a local chapter of Latino Outdoors, which looks to engage and inspire Latinx families into the outdoors. And that was like a grassroots level, right? But from that platform, a lot of folks kind of seeked out kind of that platform and myself to say like, we want your voice, we want to hear from you, we want to hear what the community needs. And I don't necessarily want to reflect and or be a spokesperson for an entire community. But what I wanted to do is continue to learn how to uplift everybody's voices at large. Starting with, again, the community that I reflect, that I'm a part of, and then continuing to learn what it means to be an ally in order to serve and to uplift other voices, because I don't have the answers. What I can do is have a seat at the table to uplift other voices. So that's kind of what inspired me to get involved.
Fantastic. Thank you. Jasmine, same question for you. A little bit of overview of your journey.
I was going to ask you to repeat the question,
Sure, yeah.
just so I can remember.
Yeah, what inspired you to become involved civically, and just give us a little bit of your journey there to where you are today?
Sure. So for me, I grew up here in Central Oregon. I lived in Bend first, and then my parents bought a house in Redmond, and I did my high school years at Redmond High. And I also went to COCC for a while, which was a great experience for me before I kind of figured out and was able to propel myself out of Central Oregon for a while, to get an education, to learn in other places. And then when I made the choice to come here after grad school and stay here, my family's here, so I was always here, so to speak. I had to make the choice to start a business and get involved, and I feel like that was something. I'd been here for 20 plus years, and I had no idea who anybody was outside my own maybe church circle at best. So first it was the business, and it was business-related organizations, and it was asking for help and putting myself in places. And that experience of being a businesswoman really helped me understand that I was a Black businesswoman and that I was a woman and that there was a lot of realities that I wouldn't assume that I'd have, but I began to become very, very clear to me. And so that experience kind of riled me up, I think. I think that, that it frustrated me, but I'm a very kind of like independent person. I think that comes from having grown up in a white space. I'm very self-reliant. I get my own goals done. I get my own thoughts done. And to the degree that a business requires collaboration with others, I was suddenly learning this idea that I needed to just step out there into the world. And then I would definitely say, for me personally, out of all of the, killings that made it onto national news all across the country, my personal thing that really broke my heart and was really hard to cover from was the Ahmaud Arbery case with the Black man who was running, and ended up being attacked. I think actually coming to the point of the court system dealing with that. But I was so bothered by the political scene at the national level and overwhelmed by it that I really didn't know what to do with myself. And I was brought in, luckily, by SCOPAC, actually, as my original, which is a community PAC that engages at the local level in the elections. And I think we had a lot of successes there. I jumped in both feet. And because I began to win and have victories in this community, and I began to push myself out there and be vulnerable and deal with the experience of being out there and being vulnerable, that and having my voice be valued and realizing that it was really important as I began to sit on, like travel committees, transportation committees and things like that, and realize like, I bring up these points that they were like, oh yeah. And so if I hadn't been in that room, nobody would have pointed out something that was very obvious to me. So I began to become really aware of how much I had been living in a silo and how it was going to require me to be a servant of my community, as Zavier was talking about. And it was going to require me to figure out what it was going to take to be an ally for the other underrepresented communities, because it was beyond necessary and it was over time. And if I didn't do it, who was going to do it? Yeah.
Thank you. That's wonderful. Thank you. Dawn, am I good back there, Scott? Dawn, question for you.
Hello. Hi, everybody. I'm super happy to be here today. This is the first time that I've actually been in a public setting like this in like over a year, and it's exactly the same nerve-wracking as it's always been. So, as you guys saw in my bio, I have a lot of lived experience. I mean, before I came to Bend, I actually lived on the streets for about 2 years in Seattle. Very low-level alcoholic. And then I came to Bend, and I hit the treatment centers and the detox centers so many times here that they made a joke that I should have a punch card. And it's okay to laugh at that. It really is. And then they came into my detox room one day and they said, this isn't working. You need something else. And I was given the number to the only sober living home in Bend. That was in year 2000. And it was a woman that had turned her bed and breakfast into sober living. And she had transitioned over 2,200 women through her home. And it saved my life. I ended up getting married in her backyard. She still volunteers to this day at our nonprofit. When I was about 40, I guess it was about 2015, I knew that I wanted to make more of my life. And I started going to Central Oregon Community College. As business. And I had some teachers there, and I'm going to point out Maeve Pearl and the Bainies, obviously not with COCC, but huge supporters because I was working at the 10 Below restaurant while I was trying to get my degree as a single mom at 40 years old. And I had a couple of the teachers up there, Jim Kress is another one, here that I was taking in a lot of women into my personal home. And trying to help them. I attend a lot of 12-step meetings. That's kind of my family there, and I wanted to help women. And then I found out that the Sober House was closing down, and I knew without a doubt that something needed to be done. I brought this to the teachers at COCC, and they helped me devise the nonprofit. I literally in my life had never heard of a 501c3. I had to Google it, and this was at 40 years old, and that is no joke. They helped me every step of the way. We had our very first board meeting at a library. It was the law library, actually. I had never heard of the name Gwen Weisling in my life. And this woman showed up at that board meeting. And it kind of blossomed from there. I continue to advocate not just for recovery. I continue to advocate for recovery instead of being locked up. And working with the women. Dawn's House has taken on a life of its own. I believe it to be divinely directed, and I just wait for signs. And I personally think that I have the absolute best job in the entire world. I choose to live on site. I have since we opened. I love being in the trenches with the women. Me, my daughter, and my 2 dogs, Biscuit and Gravy. We live right on site. I have an open door policy, and I want to continue to fight for homelessness and addiction in our community. And again, I'm really happy to be out of the house.
I think we all are. Thank you. And as a COCC employee and loving the college so much, I love that we have the COCC story today. That's not why I'm here, but I'm gonna give that extra plug. Zavier, let's come back to you for a second. We build this talk a little bit today about frustrations and or obstacles. But were there some frustrations and obstacles for you getting started? Was that a motivator for you to overcome a frustration or an obstacle? What was that like?
I mean, 100%. I think Jasmine alluded to it a little bit, to me, I could have sat in that frustration, which I did a lot of the time. But for me, it was what can I and what am I able to control? And I think what that was, and this was kind of my learnings of myself personally, of my journey from SF kind of back here, was I can, like, in a weird way, like, I'm a loud person, right? But to be able to shift that into, again, be an advocate for community members at large, and to still learn, like, what that means and what that looks like. And I'm still doing that, right? But I think sitting in that frustration and using that to serve as, like, fuel or inertia to get to where I need to or want to be in whatever circle, and still kind of guiding on that path. Because, I mean, you've said it kind of in my intro, right? I was like, through nonprofit, through being able to have a position now with the city, to be able to be an elected official, all these different things. And there's all just learning to continue to elevate, not my voice. Like, I feel like my voice is serving everybody, people who are frustrated, who can feel it. So I can kind of sit behind that frustration and try to put that behind me to serve a bigger and larger purpose for, again, not myself, but for the community members at large. And that's everybody, but also more specifically, like, for underrepresented groups. One that I reflect and that don't reflect. And again, continuing to still learn that, but to just try to push that frustration aside, because I think a lot of folks definitely still sit in that, and that's okay. But again, it was just one thing to where I was like, I'm afforded an opportunity to me that my parents gave me, right? To be a citizen, right? To be able to even just be here, to speak the English language. So again, having that and, like, my lived experience to be able to, again, just be a part of something bigger than myself.
Thank you. Jasmine, was it frustration for you? What was the catalyst? Was it just a seeing a need? Would you call that frustration that sort of was a catalyst for you to get involved in the community?
Yeah, I think it was frustration. I think that's a good, I was so frustrated and, as Avi said, about things that I could not control, and then because I began to put my hands to work that was succeeding and making an impact, just a little impact, that was like enough for me to just make a little impact. And it honestly was so therapeutic and helped me stay sane through this crazy 5 years that we've had. No, I don't, it's always crazy life, and it will always continue to be crazy. I very much believe that. So I am not opposed to the chaos that I feel like goes on inside and outside of me when you put your hands to this type of work. But I am always trying to figure out how I, as an individual, navigate said chaos. And what I found is that for all the frustrations, anxieties, both inside and out, I have to be serving others. I have to be thinking about people other than myself, which was always came easy for, family, immediate family, and things like that. I definitely understood the concept of sacrifice, but I didn't understand it at the community level, simply because I had just never pushed myself and challenged myself there. So I feel that it's almost like I'm doing this because it ends up benefiting me in the long run. So I guess there you go. I am incentivized by the fact that it does benefit me in the long run, the way a life of service benefits the person who serves. Yeah.
Well, you have to feed yourself a little bit, right?
Exactly.
Jasmine, you talked a little bit about what those obstacles were just in your own personal life and the people that helped you get this nonprofit going. But can you talk about those frustrations or a little bit more in terms of the civic engagement? I don't know if it's fundraising. Is it building the nonprofit? Is it after you read what a 501c3 was? What were those obstacles for you?
That's actually, is the mic on? Yeah. That's actually kind of an easy one. Starting a grassroots nonprofit is no joke. Truth be told, we didn't have any paid employees for 4 years. It was 100% volunteer, and it's extremely frustrating because sober housing models can very much make money, and that's the truth. And I knew that going into this that there was no way that I was going to be a for-profit for homeless women and with drug and alcohol problems. And so going that route with sober housing was frustrating, and it was hard. And I wanted to give a shout out to the Central Oregon Health Council, which was one of the first that really set a catalyst for Dawn's House and gave us some money to actually put a staff together. And again, that was 4 years that we didn't have any. And it's hard to raise funds for the nonprofit, to keep us going. I've had a lot of support from other people in the nonprofit sector giving me guidance, and I'm super grateful for that. But that's probably the most frustrating thing, would be trying to raise money to keep doing what we're doing.
Yeah, it's kind of please, Zavi.
I think a narrative that I've really embodied and what I've seen a lot of folks kind of like ourselves, I'm just kind of speaking for myself, is if not me, then who? And then if not now, then when? And just really embodying that. And I think trying to balance in a healthy way, right? It's like not say yes to everything. But again, if we are not at the table, if I'm not at the table, then I'm fearful that, these voices are not going to be heard. And that to me is like one of the biggest catalysts for sure.
Yeah, free flowing, please, Jasmine.
I feel bad because I feel like I need you to repeat the question when it's my turn, because I feel like I just piggyback off of Zavi and that I'm not really sure.
Please, yeah.
So I think you had asked about obstacles that I had felt like I'd faced coming through this. So sorry, everybody. I was going to say one of the things I want to just make sure we mention here that I think would be very valuable to all of the individuals here is that, when you're kind of taking that journey towards equity and diversity and all of those pushes, which is incredibly exciting. You read our bios, and I was thinking actually that I could have added some more stuff to it. But what ends up happening is when there's this push in such a white population area, where the dynamic is really, already very obvious where the power dynamic is, then the same people get asked to join the same thing over and over and over and over and over again. So I get requests all the time. And I went through a season of yes following Ahmaud Arbery's murder. That's a full circle thing. So I'm like, yes. And meanwhile, I was learning so much. I felt like a child, who is, in one of those developmental stages, and it's just consuming so much information and trying to apply it and trying to be useful and impactful and to be and to not just be a butt in a chair. And so that's one part of it, is the utteral demand and the emotional toll that is there. And I feel like the other side of it is that when you've been invited to a lot of tables, there's an automatic criticism of you on the flip side from the very groups that you come from and the very groups you wish to help. There is constant criticism about whether you're doing it right, or, Zavi, you talked about the frustration about that people and the angst that people have, and even the anger, right, that people have about these social justice issues, or affordable housing, or the houseless situation. All of these things create such anxiety in our community, and there's people who are riled up and they're angry about it. And because we were the people who were the most accessible, for being honest, because we're individuals who are more accessible to the white power structure, we get asked over and over again to come to the table. And so we have this pool that's happening on us where we're being accused of being a token, or we're being told that we are, not doing good enough or not doing enough, or and then like that, I don't need anybody else. I have my own inner critic that's wondering if that's wondering, am I decolonized enough? Am I being inclusive enough? Am I, am I taking the easy way out? Am I really speaking truth to power? All of that stuff. And so it's a toll, and I'm thankful for both, because I think you need the people in power who are literally ready to hand over power. That's the only way it works. They have to hand it over. And then on the flip side, you need the critics, and you need the passion, and you need the anger, and those two things work together to be productive. But I feel that one of the huge obstacles in this area is that I'm walking in this space in a fine line on a tightrope, and it's not easy, and there's very few people who understand what it feels like. There's very few people to relate to you, who hear you, or even understand we can be in the exact same room having an experience, and it's all happening to all of us, and everyone's hearing the conversation, and everyone's hearing what was said, and everyone's watching and witnessing the back and forth. But what I'm experiencing is completely different than what everyone else thought happened. And that is. It's wild, actually, to continue to be confronted with how different your worldview is from everyone else. And it's exhausting and there's nothing so isolating than the isolation is like difficult to even describe.
Thank you for your candor. Zavier, go ahead.
I want to give Don
Yeah.
one.
Well, I was going to ask Don a little bit of a pivot too, because when you tell your story so candidly and openly, of your story of recovery and building this nonprofit, is there a similar burden that you feel that you have to represent all of those folks and you have to carry that torch for the recovery community or for your nonprofit? There aren't a lot of nonprofits doing this work. So is that a burden for you, and is that an obstacle?
Absolutely not. I am so proud of how far I have come. And I'm so proud of every single one of my employees that I have. They're certified recovery mentors. We took off the streets, and they went through Dawn's house, and now they're the employees. We are peer-centered in our nonprofit. And the way that these women rise up, what could you not be proud of? I don't ever feel, it's never in my mind a burden. I do feel people may not understand, and that's why I feel it's so important that newcomers into my homes are getting guidance from people with lived experience. True empathy is walking in someone else's shoes. A lot of people can have compassion, but having the true empathy is what my staff brings to those women that are coming off the street that are broken, and they are able to look them in the eye and say, I understand, and they do. And being able to run our nonprofit that way as peer-based is, I think it's an honor, and I think all of us are just super proud. We celebrate milestones for every single woman, and maybe I'm getting off track here, but for me, no, it's like, hey, you know what? I lived in my car for 2 years on the streets of Seattle doing things that I don't even like to think about. And I'm running a wonderful nonprofit now. Heck no, it's not a burden.
Yeah. Yes, you are. Thank you. Zavier, I think you were going to speak in there a little bit, so please follow up.
Quickly to just what Jasmine said, right? I think having that understanding, and then when organizations and folks at large are always like, we want to diversify our board, we want to diversify our employment, I think that's great. But I think understanding that narrative of like having to live in that duality of worlds of like what the community is saying that for you to do or want to do, and the reality of like, well, maybe folks internally in this org or in this area are not there yet, and trying to hold that burden of like not doing enough, trying to be like that person that is the conduit, trying not to like gatekeep in any direction, and to allow more folks to the table. Because at least for me too, like I want a lot of other folks to be like, we don't want to be the same people kind of always being tasked and asked to do and be a part of these things. So again, but then again, it's like almost for me like protective of like the community to be like, well, I know like these, like it's not there yet, they're not necessarily ready, and I don't know if that's for me to say, but again, living in those areas and in those worlds, I can kind of almost speak from experience, but like it's not there yet, but we're getting there and moving forward within like what that looks like or what that could be.
Thank you. Dawn?
I kind of want to chime in on the DEI conversation here. I mean, obviously, a lot of DEI is demographic focused. You know, I want to advocate the stigma. It doesn't even matter what color, creed, or race that an addict gets on the corner. You know what I'm saying? I mean, the discrimination also that comes from that, from being an addict, and the judgment, and you know, that's something that I fight for in my nonprofit. You know, along with you know, my stance is, you know what? Well, I don't want to like shock anybody, but heroin doesn't discriminate. It doesn't care what color you are. You know, it'll take your life in a heartbeat. So the DEI for us is all, you know, we fight it from that end also. I just wanted to kind of chime in there and also just appreciate the presence and the advocacy over here.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I think we have some table discussion, and there may be a slide that's going to go up here in a second. We'll see how well we do. But basically, here's the deal. We have some questions for you guys to discuss at your table. We would like to encourage some conversation. And I think there's some prompting going on virtually right now as I speak in the amazing world of dual delivery City Club. So we have some questions, I think. There they are. Yes, great. You guys can see those questions here in the live person, and I think you're seeing them on the YouTube channel as well. In what areas of the community would you like to make a difference, or most like to make a difference? What are the biggest barriers you might encounter? Any ideas for how these can be addressed? How could you as an ally best support, facilitate the work of change makers in the community? How have you personally observed other community members making things better? And what's the most important takeaway from this forum, in your opinion? Those are for table discussion. Just want to make sure. Wanted to remind all of you to text your questions. I think we have a Menti number that's been up on the screen, and we'll do that again here to text your questions through, and then those will get relayed up to us. But just to keep this conversation going really quick, I want to focus on a little bit of now catalyst and reward rather than frustration and motivation. So let's start with you, Jasmine, real quick. What are ways you feel like you've been successful so far in your work?
Oh, that's a great question. I feel a lot of pressure about that. I feel that I have been successful in being willing to, for lack of a better word, and I keep looking for it, but I haven't come up with a better one, being willing to play the token. I think that it's highly successful and completely necessary. I want to be clear. Yes, it is. I was telling you about the experience of being asked 100 times by, you know, to join in things. But that does not mean that while sharing the emotional toll and all of that, I don't want you to stop asking, because many of you are doing great work, whether it's affordable housing, foster care reform, helping addicts. This is huge and a very, very, very important work. And if I can help propel that work forward, then I will. And so I feel I've been successful in being willing to play a role that is precarious, because it's a part of a new beginning that we're trying to walk in, and I have to be a part of that BIPOC community who steps forward and says, I will serve, I will stand in the gap. And a reason why I do this, you know, when I think about the school board races, for example, and all of that, I did that because I came up through the school system here, and I experienced overt and subvert racism daily. It was awful. And I didn't even understand everything that I experienced. But now looking back, if I could show up, be a brown face, put my face on things to help solve the problem of getting these anti-racist individuals into places of power in order to make an impact on the school experience of children in the school system here, I'll do that. And then I was just talking to Dawn, if it means that I step forward and I sit on a board or a committee with Dawn's house in order to help her get more grants, or to get more grants and money to do the work that she's doing, so that more addicts off the street, no matter the race, can be okay and set out into the world, I would do that. And so that's where I feel like this is where I'm successful. And this is where I have come in and put my arm through many organizations, gone arm in arm with them, and helped propel them towards success that they're looking for by being willing to be willing to serve, by being willing to be the token brown person into the room, by being willing to make them look more equitable and more and to prove that if they could do the plan that they want to do, whether it be affordable housing or what's another one, or foster care reform, they are going that I'm here showing that they are thinking about inclusion and they are thinking about equity and they do have my voice there. Not only do I feel like I'm giving valuable input, so it's like very deep, but I also think it's also superficial, the value that I'm bringing, and it's about how it looks. And I'm okay with that. And that is where I succeed, I think, because there is a lot of people I believe have been helped because I was willing to do that. And it's not easy, but someone's got to do it.
Thank you. That's an excellent answer. I think we have a question that maybe was going to be relayed up on the screen. We'll see it here locally. I don't know how folks will see it online. Or I have another one ready to roll. Joey, Scott in the back, drum roll. Yes, this is about empathy. Zavier, I'll bring this one to you. If empathy requires walking in your shoes, I don't even know if we have the same size shoes. How can I walk in your shoes if I'm not Black, Hispanic, or a female? I mean, is that the right premise, to walk in one's shoes?
I mean, you're never going to, and that's the whole. That's the kind of the narrative that we're saying. You're never going to, and I think the biggest thing is like, yeah, you can be empathetic, and trying to really embody and internalize what that means for another human in whatever facet that they're experiencing their own life. But I think the biggest thing is holding empathy and being empathetic in an empathetic space, listening. And when you listen, do what they're telling you. If you're gonna ask them like whatever it is you're gonna ask them, whoever it is, whatever group, whatever whatever, listen. And whatever they're saying, they're telling you. If you're asking the community, and build relationships first with folks, don't just ask for something. But I think if you're trying to walk in somebody else's shoes, you're never going to. That's okay. That you're never going to, myself included, and for a lot of folks, right? But if you're asking something of like, how can I do this better for whatever group, and they're telling you, do that.
Thank you. Don, what would you say to that? How could folks not necessarily walk in your shoes, but show empathy for your work and your cause?
So, the way that I would talk about empathy is, this is the way that I look at it. God forbid somebody was to lose a child. And you have somebody come up to you and say, I know how you feel. No, you don't know unless you've lost a child, and so when I was trying to get sober, and I would have somebody that and the struggle was so hard, and I would have somebody that was not an addict or an alcoholic or ever homeless telling me, I understand. They don't understand. So I think for me, empathy is actually having to bend in that situation. But also I feel if there's any cause that really pulls at your heartstrings, then there's a sense of just deep compassion for that cause. I don't want to get caught up in terminology of words here. But I do believe that a form of empathy is possible, with creative thinking.
Great, thank you. I think the clock is not our friend always in these great conversations, but as it ticks away, I think we have time, maybe Joey, Scott, for one more question on the screen. Let's see, drum roll, please. Thanks to everyone who sent in questions. Sorry we weren't able to get to them all. Great. What is the best path for me to get involved in activism? What's the best path? And we had a similar question sent in as sort of like, how can concern-motivated citizens get involved? Jasmine, I'll have you take this one first if you don't mind.
Sure. So, I feel like it's pay attention. First, to piggyback off Dawn, I would say recognize what moves you. Because this stuff is going to get really, really hard at some point, and you're going to have to say, I'm doing this for, and then be able, and that like literally gives you the breath to continue forward. I almost feel like I need to punt this question because the truth is, as I already explained, I got involved because people came to me. Yes, I wanted them, and then they just suddenly appeared all in front of me. So that's, so I thought I should do more, and then they were all there. So I don't really have like a blueprint in all honesty, that I could authentically give. What do you think?
Yeah, Zavi, what do you say to folks who want to get involved?
I mean, I think you said it at the beginning. I think for me, it's just, what do you care about? What are you passionate about? That in itself will drive you and propel you into tough conversations that are going to get tough, that are going to get hard. But when you as a person, as an individual, care about whatever it is, you're actively engaged. And for me, I have learned and I have found that it's just being a part of something bigger than myself, but it's people. Like, I love people, and I want to help people and be a part of like that process. And so for me, like, I think that's why there's like a range of like, there's no blueprint. For me, it was like, cool, like, I love the outdoors, but there's a lot of intersectionality within a lot of these sectors. They're all trying to do the same thing in these different ways, or the same ways, or they should be doing it the same ways. But it's like figuring that out. And at the beginning of the holistically, that got me engaged was I cared. And so what are you passionate about? Drive that and just be curious. Google. I mean, we live in an information age. Like, that's literally what I did when I moved back from San Fran. I was like, I literally Googled Mexicans outside in Bend, and literally did that because I had no idea where else to look, right? And I landed on Latino Outdoors, reached out to them. Again, there's no blueprint. There's no like fine-tuned way of like someone's going to show you like how to do that. Like, just be naturally curious, and I promise like you'll find like that way and what's meant like for you.
Yourself to their events and to their spaces where where people who are doing whatever type of work you're passionate about go to where they are, and then there will be opportunities in multiple ways for you to help, whether it be financial or with volunteer time or serving on a committee or a board. There is usually multi-layered ways that you can step in and begin to do this work. If you can't say, I understand what you're going through, well, then you can empower the people who do. That's what I think.
Excellent. I think if you Google Mexican outside Bend now, it's just pictures of you, Zavi, that come up. It's just like a whole bunch of them.
Which is fine for now. I don't want it to be there.
Yeah. I think, again, now we have a perfect segue to getting involved, sort of the what can I do next in this situation. And I think a lot of you that are here in City Club, you are involved, you're engaged, but there's folks that are out there that really don't know what they want to do and want to do more. And I think we have a slide maybe to speak to that about getting involved. I'll just recap it. Now more than ever, it's time to engage in your community and support those that are advocates in our community. Support the folks on this stage, but support a lot of the folks who aren't even here today or probably doing the work as we sit here. And if you're looking to make change in your community, think outside the box. Get involved in nonprofits addressing these issues, your neighborhood association, a city or county committee, volunteer to coach on a sports team. There are a lot of ways to do it. It's okay to take that first step. I think we're going to put up on the screen too, I'm not sure how this is going to work on our virtual, but there are 100 committees currently that need volunteers and are struggling to get folks engaged. Yes, Dawn.
Since we have opened in 2015, we have struggled to keep even a 7-person board. We are a working board, and so it tends to be difficult. So we can definitely use help on the board level, and we really, really can.
It's at donshouse.org. There you go. And if you feel disconnected from how your decisions are made, or your citizenry, or as a regular citizen, you can't affect change, whether it be in climate or in a local area, just remember the stories you heard today, people that saw a need and really address that head on. So again, thanks to our 3 panelists very much, and we'll bring Kim Gammon, Executive Director of City Club of Central Oregon, up to the stage.
Thank you all so much for being willing to share your stories today. Do I need to do something? Thank you all so much for being willing to share your stories today, and to Zach for guiding us through this discussion. Thank you to Kathy Schroeder and Terry Schwab, who served on our program committee to plan this event. And I also wanted just to take a moment now that we are in person to thank some departing board members, Scott Douglas, Lisa Goodman, Elaine Nobbs Seaholtz, and Jeff London. And I also want to thank Blair Garland, our 2021 president, and Gwen Weisling, our 2020 president, who helped guide City Club through a very difficult couple years. And also, of course, to Joy Drucker for handing me the reins of an amazing organization in a very strong position despite what we've gone through. If you're not currently a member, please consider taking the time to come to cityclubco.org and join. And to echo the discussion we just had up here, we are also in a volunteer drive right now. So historically, we've had very strong, very large committees, but the pandemic has been hard on involvement and keeping people going. So we're hoping as we're back in person that there will be an increased interest in participating on committees. There is some information at your table and then outside. I also want to thank our elected leaders here today. I believe we have Councillor Broadman and Councillor Keebler. And then, of course, Zavier is on the Bend Parks and Rec Board. And I think everyone. On December 16th, City Club will be back here for a discussion about humor, awkwardness, and the pain of gathering together again. So it's going to be a very fun discussion. We're going to face head on that this is a little weird, and it's weird sometimes in this format. It's weird with our families, and how do we come back together, and what do we take that we've had before, and what do we improve on? So thank you for being here today and for viewing online. Please continue to cultivate conversation about issues that connect us all to build a strong community.